And I want you to know that code switching absolutely plays a part in that. Now, I know some Black women say that code switching is a superpower, but here's the thing. For some women, it dims you so much that it is no longer a superpower. Now you're running a watered down version of yourself. Hey queens, welcome back to my channel. Things are going to be very different here. If you have not seen my relaunch video, then I highly suggest that you go back and watch that, because that is going to be the foundation for it all. But in today's episode, I'm going to share with you 2 questions that you can ask yourself if you have been dimming your light. These 2 questions will help you move forth. So in June of 2020, after that Black Lives Matter protest that I mentioned in my relaunch video, that is when I understood that personal development for Black women like myself has to look different. Now, I've always been into personal development and mindset work, as well as spirituality, and I've been on a personal growth journey for many, many years. I grew up as that kid always asking her mom, can you please take me to the bookstore, because I just wanted to spend time in the self-help section. I have no idea why I wanted to do that, but that was just me. And so as an adult, of course, I'm still fully submerged into personal development, and I have been on a spiritual journey of awakening for the past few years. And I've coupled personal development and spirituality, and I really do think that they have to go hand in hand. I don't think that you can really separate the two. I think we need both. And after that protest, I understood that the personal development work that I had been doing just wasn't enough. It was good, but it wasn't enough. There's another layer that we really need to penetrate, and that layer is code switching. Now, I was never privy to the word code switching. I had no idea that how I was, thinking or acting or behaving at work, that was called code switching. But basically, it's altering who you are. It's changing a dynamic of yourself in order to fit into the majority. And a lot of Black women code switch at work. We enunciate our words differently. We move differently. We communicate differently. We dim parts of who we are just so we can be palatable in the workspace. Now, if you've gone to a predominantly white institution, whether it was college or maybe it started in high school or even elementary school, and now you are working in a predominantly white space, you've basically been code switching your whole life. So imagine the kinds of programs that you are teaching your subconscious mind. No one taught us how to code switch. No one says, here's the handbook on code switching. No one teaches you that. You just learn how to do it through observation. It's just this unwritten code of switching, right? And you don't even know how you've learned it, but you know that you are doing it. And I know you know what I'm talking about. That will create a disconnect in yourself, especially if you've been doing personal development work. The more that you continue to grow yourself as a person and then go back into the environment where you have to dim yourself, now there's a level of disconnect. This is part of the reason why I was feeling stifled at work. And I've made a video on this before, but I finally understand the evolution of feeling stifled. Here I am doing personal development, really looking to up-level myself, and then going back into an environment where I can't fully show up and be who I am because I have to be palatable to the people that I'm around. That was creating the disconnect, and frankly, I was exhausted. Friggin' exhausted. It's like mental gymnastics every single time, making sure that I enunciate all my words and making sure that I act this way or act that way just so that I can fit in and not be the angry Black woman. So what started to happen was when I really wanted to fully show up, I noticed that I had a disconnect in who I was. I felt like I had imposter syndrome. I had a hard time showing up. And where I really noticed this most was in growing my network marketing business. That is how things really started to come to the surface for me, because I was feeling this disconnect in self. And even just producing some of the videos that I've made here previously, I was always practicing everything that I was teaching you guys here on previous episodes, but there was still another element that I couldn't quite put my finger on. And that last element really revealed itself to me during that protest and this past year, basically. Just imagine this for a second. If you are running an altered program of yourself at work. And by altered, I mean you are code switching, you're dimming yourself. That same program then takes itself and carries over into your personal relationships, into your most intimate relationships, into your friendships, and into your business if you have one. And so when you start to want to show up more and show up fully and you feel like you can't, part of the reason is the fact that you are running this dim your light program in the background, because you are wondering, who do I be in that moment? Do I be who society wants me to be, or are you being what you think you should be, or are you being your true authentic self? You get a little bit fuzzy vision here and clouded because you don't know how to fully show up. So here's what I know about you. I know that you feel big. I know that you feel like you were made for something. I know you have a deep burning desire to do something big and to do something great. I know you probably love what you do for work, but don't really feel like you are in love with the whole process of what you might be doing at your job. You are looking for a purpose. You are looking for that deeper meaning, that deeper connection, because you've been feeling disconnected from who you are. But I know that you want to tap in to that full potential that you feel deep inside. And I know sometimes you feel like you've gotten there and then you're like, wait, I lost it. I was there for a second, but then I lost it. I felt it, but then I lost it. What happened to it? A lot of that is when we step into our power and then come back and dim our light. Step into our power and then come back and dim our light. And we feel like a yo-yo. We feel like we're on this push-pull all the time. But you're ready to figure it all out. And I want you to know that code switching absolutely plays a part in that. Now, I know some Black women say that code switching is a superpower, but here's the thing. For some women, it dims you so much that it is no longer a superpower. Now you're running a watered down version of yourself, a stenciled version of yourself. I have to joke and laugh when I say the word stencil, because my coach and I talked about that. We talked about being filtered, but it's like a stencil. You could only go within these lines. And I was just ready to color outside the lines. I was just ready to get rid of the stencil, shatter that. And I know that you are too. So here are 2 questions that you can ask yourself to move the needle forward so that you can finally step into your light. Here's the first question. What are you afraid of if you show up fully? Simple question, but a lot of depth to that if you spend time with it. What are you afraid of if you show up fully? Are you afraid of looking stupid? Are you afraid of not fitting in? Are you afraid of not belonging? Are you afraid of being made fun of? What are you really afraid of? What comes up? Do you feel shame? Do you feel guilt? Do you feel anxiety? What is it for you? What are you afraid of? And it's not just to answer the question and it be one statement. After you answer the question in your one statement, ask another question. But why am I afraid of that? But why am I afraid of that? Why am I afraid of that? Ask yourself why about 7 times. That way you're going to really get to the bottom of what you are really afraid of. Because if we don't know and we can't pull out what's at the bottom to bring to the surface, we have to create consciousness around it. We have to be conscious of what we're afraid of, so that way when we go out into our life, we can see the situations that then make us fearful and dim our light. When we can see it, now we can choose a different behavior. So I hope that makes sense. And now the second question to ask yourself is, how can I show up more? How can I show up more? Now, what I can tell you for me personally is it was speaking up more. It was in the way that I communicate. Now, let me give you some examples. If there was a situation in my personal life where I felt like I had just turned my dimmer switch down, I recognized it because I asked myself question number 1, which is, what am I afraid of? When I recognize what I'm afraid of and I brought more light and consciousness to it, when I asked myself, how can I show up more? When these situations came that made me feel uncomfortable, where I turned my light down, that's when I said, okay, I'm going to choose to show up differently here. I'm going to choose to be a different way. I'm no longer going to practice the same way of being. I'm going to be how I really want to be. How does the Siobhan that is showing up in her full power and her true essence, how is she responding to this experience or this situation right now? Now, this took some practice. I didn't just say, okay, here are all the situations where I can show up more and let me just go show up more, because I recognized that I had a lot of fear around showing up more and showing up fully because I was worried about being judged. Fear of judgment is real. Let me tell you, it's so real. I had so much fear around it. I couldn't just decide to turn my dimmer switch up in every single situation. So I picked very small instances and pockets where I know I could show up more. And a lot of that stemmed around my communication in my personal relationships. But what I started doing was very actively choosing to voice my opinion, voice my concern. I didn't just keep brushing it under the rug to try and keep the peace, because that's basically what I had grown up doing, was keeping the peace externally. But on the inside, I had this internal war because I wasn't speaking up. And so I've come to understand that every time I didn't speak up in my relationship to keep the peace, I was creating more internal turmoil. And it was so interesting because I had this very visceral reaction when it was time for me to speak up. I was like, ugh, like it was visceral. I could feel it in my gut. I created the anxiety, but here I am creating all this internal stuff, internal thought drama around all of it just because I was so afraid to speak up. But what I've understood is that when I keep my internal peace, people around me are also happier. I was always afraid if I didn't come off in a certain way that this thing would happen and that thing would happen, and I was just creating so much more anxiety and thought drama in my own self that wasn't even needed. So I just found these moments in my life where I can fully speak up, and I use those as teaching moments to show myself evidence that when I do speak up, good shit happens. And I absolutely love providing more evidence in my life because that builds self-trust. And ultimately, that is why we make decisions that are sometimes not for us, because we don't have the amount of self-trust that we need. And so doing this practice of showing up more fully and where you can do that at will build more self-trust. Then you'll be able to make more decisions that are for you and for your highest good, rather than out of fear and trying to keep the peace around you. So those are the two questions. What are you afraid of if you show up fully? And how can you show up more? I would love to see your answers in the comments below. Drop them down there and let me know. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Share this with somebody if you know that they can benefit from it. Be sure to like this video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. I will see you guys in next week's episodes. Bye!